All right, so we are taking a look at Congestion Crusaders, and I am joined by Axelrod. Hello.
Good to be here.
All right, so just before I started the highlight, you were mentioning that this was made by a team of four um, people who are close to you.
Yes, and myself. Yep. We some of us have some experience with game design, but some people it was our first game, and I'd say all of us are either beginner or amateur.
All right, we've got some really cool bopping music on the title screen here.
It's public domain. All the sounds are.
I mean, it sounds really cool, so it's a good way to get hyped for the experience.
Sure.
So well chosen in that sense.
Yeah.
So in that case, what was your role on the project?
I did a bunch of programming, and I did most of the balance work with a bunch of features. Last few hours trying to make it all the systems we had built over the last 3 days coherent. I did a bunch of programming of individual units. Some of the other people on the team did more art and did more systems programming, like making sure everything worked in place.
Okay. So we got our DNA here, and mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Yes, can't not have that. Increases your humbly powering your DNA stash in points. Okay, so we have to put those down to sort of power it. But I realize you've got a lot of DNA to work with here, and
There's a reason for that.
yeah, okay. Well, let's just put down. Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. I just had to have it selected there. I don't know. I'm just going to put down a whole bunch of these and I don't know. I'll hit start, see how things go. Okay, we got a lot of stuff flying towards us super quickly. I see. So we are steadily losing towers here. So I should probably be building a whole lot more of these guys. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, you die super quick here. Okay.
Yep.
And now we are defending the stomach. So first it was the eye, which was a little creepy. Now we are defending the stomach. If you
Perhaps
DNA
creepy in a
wrong,
different way.
yeah, it just I understand the idea that you're protecting your vital organs, right?
Yeah, the immune system.
Okay, so I guess I should just put down like if I think of the mitochondria as is that giving me more DNA points?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll probably put those closest to the middle here, and then just defend the heck out of them with a bunch of other. Oops, I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention to the budget. Oh, that's okay. It's okay. I can come back from this. I just need to. I just got to generate mad points and use them to buy towers. Totally
Hi, Mark.
recoverable. Totally recoverable. Just investing. It's an investment. How long are you trying to survive for?
It is a max out your score kind of game. So, you will get more points if you make it further, and you'll also
Yeah.
get more points if you protect your large numbers of mitochondria for longer.
Uh
We
huh.
wanted to have a level-based thing where you would get more and more limited space as you got to higher levels, but we found that a single level kind of made it more coherent and more fun for the limited scope we had for balancing.
Hmm. Yeah, I gotta say it's a little daunting to have such a huge budget to start out the game with.
Yeah, it was something that we found based on the a lot of like I said, a lot of the balance came in the final moments where we were worried about people getting to a solved unbreakable board state if
Hmm.
we didn't have a pretty oppressive enemy regime, and also the grid was pretty big. um
All right.
So the large board comes from early in design, and then we had to kind of account for that. Like, well, okay, the board's large, therefore the number of guys needs to be kind of large, which means the cost needs to be low compared to the amount of money you have.
Mm-hmm.
But as a result, we have a very high enemy count. Um, I had played a few Ludum Dare games so far with like kind of the opposite problem, where it kind of goes on forever, but it's easy to never die.
Mm.
So it was a balancing act.
Oh my goodness. Well, at least this time I set up a wall, I set up my turrets. We're doing a little bit better here. I see having a varied defense is more important. So does the mitosis like just recover one cell spot?
Um, nope. I can tell you exactly how it works if you want.
Yeah, I'm a little curious because I saw it do its little divide animation and then like one cell that as far
Yep.
as I noticed, one cell changed back.
Yep. It picks a random no longer accessible cell near itself and makes it
Mhm.
usable again. And that
Mhm.
applies to both the cells that you lose to the edges closing in, and it also applies to the cells you lose to you losing units on them. And that's kind of the key to surviving extra time, is
Mhm.
to take the really fast-paced gameplay and not let it overwhelm you, and try to build your base out even as everything is closing in.
Yeah, because I think that I don't know. Given the opportunity, the suggestion that Chitori has here, yeah, the first 5 seconds do feel particularly difficult for a first time player. Also, I totally screwed up my layout here because I was trying to follow a hex grid. So we're just
We
gonna
do
take
have
the
a
L.
return to menu if you hit escape.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I will.
Yes, I agree with that. And with more time, there would have been a smoother ramp up. Although we were worried about, if you give them too much time at the start, can they use that to build a really, really good unbreakable board with all the extra time they get to generate DNA? Um, so Ludum Dare style, I would rather have something that's fun the fifth time and onward than something that's only fun the first two times and then it's easy to solve.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely a little overwhelming. Like the just the sheer number of stuff you get all at once is what makes it like feel kind of daunting at first. But the oh, okay, I see these little like mitosis guys are recovering the space that I had here, and I can try putting down some of these. So I understand that you would theoretically like continually be placing things, but I feel like the sort of central idea of putting your mitosis or your mitochondria near the very middle and then building out from there is just kind of it's it's hard to think about economy given the pace of the game. Like there is so much happening all at once.
Yep, it is definitely hard. Pacing, it was kind of inspired by, in my eyes, the later parts of like an unlimited run of a tower defense, Plants
Mm.
vs Zombies style. Like in a game like Plants vs Zombies, you
Yeah.
have a very laid back first 2 minutes, and then at the very end, it's really exciting. And I would love to have gotten it to a little bit more of an even pace ramp up, but part of my desire, it was indeed wanting to. Yep, you're getting closed in on here.
Yeah, I see.
Was wanting to get to the fun part of the tower defense relatively quickly, as opposed to, like, if I only had to do one thing, which is what I have in a Ludum Dare. If I had
Mm.
time to make a really even pace, I definitely would have done more. But yeah, you kind of made it to that last ring there.
Well, What do you think? Is 1,700 an okay score?
I'd say that's the point at which you've demonstrated a basic understanding. Unless someone left a comment recently where they got a higher score, I think my high score is 3,612, and I did have another friend of mine who got 3,500.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yes, you have to do that by, as you saw, the mitosis can reclaim some of the corrupted territory, and then you go back. You put some mitochondria and some defenses out there, and then put more mitosis to kind of reclaim the center after the center gets infected.
Yeah, I'm trying another sort of layout here where I'm sort of leaving myself this inner ring for building. Let's try and get my walls up as quickly as I can. So I'm leaving a gap around the sort of inside there because I feel like that's where I want to build my little mitosis cells. And I guess just on the outer ring, just build some of these born to die antibodies.
Yeah, cheap.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, can you talk a little?
I don't want to dissuade you from experimenting, but there are a few things that I've found to be a good strategy. You're getting very close to it. The green guys on the outside help a lot, and buying time with the white guys is helpful. I don't usually put mitosis near the middle, maybe one or two. But once the ring gets to about here, I'll place one kind of near the outside, but maybe not the outside, and then use that direction to try to run out. The other thing I do is I'll put much more mitochondria than this. Because the mitosis are expensive, and we had to make them that way.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of gun shy after the first round where I just placed entirely too many mitochondria.
Now that you can afford it, like, this is going to power almost anything you could do. Although now you have nowhere to place. Oh, you have some mitosis you can put in the bottom right there.
Yeah, that's very, very limited. Oh, and then they died. Let's see if they can survive long enough to propagate here.
Yep. You're kind of getting it, yep.
Although definitely and rapidly losing space. We're down to our innermost wave of defenders, and we're starting to face increasing odds. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
you're getting closer and closer to my most successful runs as you go. So
cool. Well, I'll keep messing around with that. But in the meantime, can you talk a little bit about the actual development process for the game?
Sure. We had gotten the prompt. Limited space. We had a few ideas we were playing around with, but because a lot of us were either beginners or novices at game development, we thought, all right, we have these really cool ideas about some inventory management kind of thing, which it seems like a lot of the other contestants went for, where we have to build an entire grid system and item management and maybe an auto battler. And we liked the idea, but we were like, okay, there's something to be said about getting something done. And the simpler idea was, okay, a tower defense where your space gets more limited over time, right? Easy enough to wrap your head around. Some tower defenses even do that in the first place. And we would figure out the heavy part of the theming later. Drawing from other tower defense ideas was in there, but we were thinking about art styles that would be good with a limited budget, and how much more simple can you get than a single-celled organism, right? Trying to make the product relatively presentable in a limited time meant that working within limitations is fun within its own right too. We were I mean, I would say we didn't have like a super hard plan, but we did have a Google Doc of everything we kind of wanted to get done. Some people were screwing around with some of the features that took maybe longer than they should have. I think animating those little green dudes to attack after their animation comes out instead of when it starts took me more time than it should have. getting the hex plot to programmatically work took a lot of time. The hex was kind of my idea. I'm like, oh, I really like using hexes in games because there's no ambiguity about normalizing diagonal movement. Every hex is always next to every other hex in the same distance from every other hex, and that's all nice. But it was a little bit hectic for the programmer working on that aspect. But we got all the systems in place. We had the enemy spawns was something we wanted to do more with if we had time, but it was functional and we were running low on time, so we were just like, all right, enemies come randomly from the outside. I think the Godot tutorial actually just kind of has that as a feature, like, oh, make enemies spawn randomly and move across the screen. We just kind of leveraged that really hard, and then found a YouTube tutorial for here's how to make one tower defense tower, and then kind of winged it from there. I really liked Godot as an engine. I had used Unity in the past to the other game jam that I did, and I liked it, but it wasn't as intuitive. I'm also a better programmer than I was back then. It was a fun time working with this, and it was a fun time in the end seeing something come together. It's like, oh, I made this, and my design decisions came around. The very last 4 hours, we had like, oh, everything dies in one hit. Like, okay, I got to start assigning these health numbers and playing it over and over and over again. But every time that you play more than like 3 or 4 times in a patch that you know is bad, you're like, oh, I just want to change it. I don't have enough time to like send this to people and like map out everything. So
no, it's tricky. I mean, I've designed a couple tower defense games myself, and I know that like I was working with relatively small numbers. Like, I think the chunkiest enemy that I had in the game had like 12 or 13 health, and then things were dealing damage in increments of like 4, or half that if it was quote unquote ineffective. So the math was like relatively simple, and yeah. So how much like, because there's one thing that I'm kind of missing from the interface here is I don't have a concept of how much damage one of these things does versus another. Like,
yep, yeah, a lot of that flavor text up there was typed last minute, and all of our numbers were in flux until the last minute. I changed some of them an hour or two before release. I'm happy where it came out, but off the top of my head, antibiotics does 5 damage. The one at the top right, I think macrophage does like 4. The bottom left is a one-shot lymphocyte. That was it. And the bottom middle does 9 damage. So the bottom middle actually does a lot more damage, and it's, in my opinion, kind of the key to success. But what I like about it is like you can't only get by with that. You do need some of the long-range antibiotics near the center of the base to lay down some initial fire to weaken up things so that the green guys can kind of kill them in front, is what I've been finding.
Yeah, I don't know how I've managed it, but I offset these guys. That's what I did. I'm trying for a slightly different pattern here where I sort of alternate the two of these guys. Let's see if I can fill in the walls before I get swarmed here. Okay. And then from here, I'll just build a bunch more mitochondria, as I can at least. This is the current plan, at least. We'll see. I know that at a certain point I also need to leave gaps to include the mitosis, but, you know, we'll focus on survival first, and then...
One in there would probably do you good.
A single ring, you mean?
A single mitosis. Although now you can't really put a single one, but yeah, you got your money now. But this is the point where I'd be putting green guys all around the outside, because the white ones don't attack, but you can afford to like spam the green ones now, and they make a good front line.
I just figured that the white ones, I know that they don't attack, but I figured that they would.
They're good for what you use them for, but this is the point where you have a lot of money where you don't need to get the cheap ones anymore.
Oh yeah, I see. I can just go crazy with.
And this is the point where I'd definitely be putting down a bunch of a bunch of those guys to try to reclaim the board, and then on that part of the board, I'll put more green guys and then
Yeah.
some more mitochondria in that corner so that I still have money generation if the middle dies.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then start to try to make my way back around to the middle to protect the middle was some of my most successful runs.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess you've got this like sort of slowly encroaching like the I'm about to lose my sort of wall here, so it'd be important for me to sort of develop another couple mitochondria hotspots so that I've, as you said, I'm like sort of continuing to get an economy going here. There's actually a large overlap with a like some real time strategy concepts, I guess.
Yep, I had some of that in mind. Like you want to just kind of like in a game like Age of Empires or StarCraft, you want to max out the space dedicated to generating resources, the number of normal villagers and things.
Yeah.
You did you got I think the third highest score I've ever seen. So
Okay. Well.
congrats. It's nice if you can I think one of the keys will be like trying to get some sort of defense on all sides because you were defending every side just fine except the top right corner.
Uh-huh. I see. Yeah, I mean, I think a large part of that honestly just comes down to the pace of play. Like it's a very fast-paced game, so you have to be scanning essentially like all sides in a sort of 360 pattern, keeping an eye out for where you need to drop stuff. Then I know you have the hotkeys like with the number row, but I don't. My brain is not acclimated to which hotkey corresponds to which cell, so
Yep.
it's it's a very high APM game in
Yes, it
that
is,
sense.
and that's also somewhat real-time strategy. Like almost a real-time strategy light. Same
Hmm.
amount of APM, but not as much micromanagement.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, yeah. I mean, I think it's a very interesting concept that you can definitely like. It depends on what sort of aspect of this you double down on. Like if you really want to double down on that like real time tower defense game, I mean that was literally one of the games I made. Well, technically both of the tower defense games that I made, um, both Allocate and Orbit, are based on this idea of a like real time tower defense. So with Allocate, you had this like limited power that you need to route to these different towers, and you need to like there's people um who reviewed Orbit specifically were kind of getting on my case for like, oh, there's as if it's a tower defense game, why is there so few towers? It's like because I wanted to make them all unique. So I just
Yep.
had this idea of same thing here, like enemies coming from all sides, and you need to very high emphasis on manual targeting. Why is this playing in such terrible resolution? There we go. But it's still a like slightly slower pace of play. As you can see, there are far fewer positions where you can place towers, but it's more about like actively repositioning towers to like make up for the fact that you don't have much firepower by um, being very deliberate about where you're aiming your towers and that kind of thing.
I like
Always
the
gets
concept. Real-time aiming was something that we considered but couldn't didn't have the scope for in this.
Yeah, and I don't think it would have made sense for a game like this where you have so many different towers. Like this is definitely you're building out tons and tons of towers, so it wouldn't make sense to try to assign targets to each of them separately.
Yep. Maybe at most a direction for them to fire in if they had like an AoE attack.
Yeah, like I can imagine some sort of like a signaling cell. Like I'm pretty sure that that's a thing that exists in biology. Is just something like that latches on and produces a bunch of proteins saying like, "Hey, come kill this thing."
Yep.
So something that you could drop on a grid square and kind of like focus fire. But that would also mandate an enemy type that required the focus fire. So
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. And I agree with Chitori in the chat who says a few more units would have been good. Something I also agree with. The mitosis that kind of made it a lot more fun was
mm,
something that was added last minute, and more units indeed would also be another thing that I would like to do. And evening out the pace near the start is also something that I would be interested in doing. We have a couple things that we might want to deliver in the next week, 2, 3 or so. Like right now, you can't click on a tower to buy it if you don't have enough money for it. Even if you know you want to buy it the moment you have enough money for it.
Okay.
Which was a cool UI thing to solve, but it wasn't a. It ends up being kind of frustrating when you're like, no, I know I don't have enough for this mitosis now, but I know I'm going to in 3 seconds, and I want to click it in preparation for clicking. Some small stuff like that, and maybe cleaning up a couple of these sprites as well. We'll see what we have time for. Oh, you're going. So even though I think the greens are often the key to success, the fact that they can't start targeting something until
because they have low range.
It gets pretty close. Low range makes this kind of thing not work great, but what you can do to salvage this really well is put a bunch of the antibiotics in the middle spaces you've left yourself.
Yeah, I see. So I think that these are all characteristics, like the range, firepower, and because the sort of text, like lore text descriptions of each of these don't necessarily, like the antibiotics does specifically mention the long range, but the antibody doesn't necessarily, like, just because this one is long range, I don't necessarily realize that, oh, so this one is short range. So I'm wondering if
it does say melee weapon.
Okay. Yes, it does. And then this one is the one that just fires indiscriminately in all directions.
Like putting it in a very, very basic, like, range, low, range, medium, range, high is something that I think would be a good feature.
Yeah, because I literally remember reading that before and then thinking like, oh, well, if it's so powerful, I should just use more of those, and then realizing like, well, no, you can't just like put a wall and put powerful units shooting out from behind it. So I don't know. You've sort of alluded to the fact that you want to continue development of the game, but what's your timeline like for that? You sort of have a limited time?
We don't have very much time as a group. A lot of things in life had to go on hold to do this jam in the first place, and we have to catch up on those now.
Yep.
This is maybe sometime in the next few weeks we'll find a few hours to dedicate to cleaning up, like, the easy stuff is the hope. Making a full concept out of this would be fun, but probably difficult on the schedule. We'll see. Some of us have expressed some interest. It's probably not very soon.
Yeah, again, I guess it all depends on just like how much how the reception is towards the game, which aside from me, like, how many folks have you gotten to try the game?
A couple friends. They liked it. I didn't get to check the comments today because I sat down and then immediately pinged you. Let's see. Oh yes, a few others. One person says they can't open it. Oh well.
Well, I didn't have any trouble opening it, so I don't know why they experienced that.
Yep. The general consensus seems to be, yes, the pacing, very in your face, very fast, but that it becomes fun with a little bit of perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about as much as I could ask for. That was pretty much what I was going for.
All right.
And what we were going for as a team too. Like I said before, I'd rather have something that's fun after you get used to it than only fun until you get used to it.
Yeah,
ideally it's fun both times, but if you only have time to make it like one, then we do that.
Mm-hmm. I think that totally makes sense from the perspective of working on a game jam and making sure that you are prioritizing that sort of like short-term experience that players are going to have, because they're mostly just going to be like trying the game, playing for a couple minutes, and then moving on to something else. So yeah, totally get it.
Hitori says in the chat it would be good to have a tutorial, and although I agree with that, it is just a game that you can restart. So the opportunity cost of not having a tutorial is pretty low. You lose your first run. That's how it goes. That's how I think of it, like a roguelike. You're not really supposed to do well in your first roguelike run.
I think that the issue is, and this is something that I ran into with my other with this game here, Allocate, is that I also did not have time to implement a tutorial. So I have all the instructions written out on the jam page here, and then technically it's in the game as well, just with a bunch of screens that you can click through here. Um, by the way, I know you mentioned a few RTS games as inspiration, but if you're at all familiar with the Command and Conquer franchise, I'm wondering if how much of this artwork seems, if you can see the inspiration
A
going
little
into
bit of
this.
the isometric thing, but I'm not overly familiar with it.
Right. But yeah, so just having a slideshow like that is obviously not great for, it's not a replacement for a proper tutorial that actually teaches you how to play the game. But I think that the visuals, like the even just a handful of graphics that I have there is more effective than just the text explanation. And with a game that has, not like an overwhelming number of towers, but this is where
Oh, like render perhaps a circle around the thing's firing range.
that would be helpful, but even just like instead of the text that we have here that like kind of describes it, but in ways that are maybe a little hard to wrap your head around, like ex- understanding the fact that people are going to be playing this for just that like super short time, it would be more helpful to be just like generates DNA. Like I know it says, hmm, like just
A little
a
a small blurb of the important points, and then put the flavor text after that. Is that what you're saying?
or just not even bother with flavor text because the yeah, like I do understand that the mitosis one like needs to be explained because, but even then, like I understand that that's what it's supposed to do, but I don't necessarily understand how it does it. Like I still don't quite understand. Um, so that's where like a little visual graphic of this is going to replenish these destroyed cells and these green cells and give you a bit more of an insight as to how it works.
Sure, makes sense.
And other than that, yeah, just like for some of these other ones, a literally like a line by line, like range, low, medium, high, power, low, medium, high, HP, like in the case of these white blood cells, that is, it's just a wall, right? So a slightly more utilitarian description for these, and I feel like that would go some way towards making it a little easier to grasp.
Sure, that's definitely something that would not be difficult to implement very quickly.
Yeah, I figured that that would be pretty quick fix, and then yeah, like if I'm trying to tailor advice to the idea that you will have some time to work on this, but not necessarily a whole lot. Um, I think some tweaks could be made so that you don't get quite so many enemies right off the bat. Like you have a little bit of time to build up your reserves. Like even if you started with less initial currency, this is something that I encountered when I was designing Orbit. But the idea is that in the very first wave, I've artificially made it so that only the two most basic enemies in the game would spawn, either these little red crabs or these pink beetles. And that means that the player, to successfully counter them, only needs to deploy the type of satellite that is strong against that enemy type. So that kind of gave this flexibility of, okay, I don't need to worry about having a very diverse satellite defense array. I can just focus on one type and invest more in my long-term economy. So you'd be building more solar panels to, excuse me, to like build up your the resources that you need to then deploy more satellites over time. So like if you gave players enough currency, enough DNA to build like 1/6 or maybe 1/2 of their overall defenses, or like sorry, 1/6 or maybe 2/6 a third of their overall defenses, and then just knowing that, okay, enemies are going to start to show up. So I'm reminded of in Plants vs. Zombies, um, I would always just start with a full row of sunflower, and then I wouldn't even place a pea shooter until I saw where, like, literally the first zombie appears. That's where I drop my first pea shooter. Because there's no point in putting one down until you know where they're going to start to come from.
Yep. I would put a spud mine because it was cheap.
Right.
It allowed me to build more sunflowers even more quickly.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say I was necessarily any good at Plants vs. Zombies.
No, but you had a thing that I would do sometimes too. Yeah, that makes sense. I do like the idea of a slower start, and like, it does make me a little bit sad that we might have alienated some people with the fast pacing, but we made what we could.
Yeah, of course, and that's why I'm making these suggestions purely based on, like, these are things that I know that are easy to implement, easy to tweak, because it's just value changes. You're not actually writing any new code or anything.
Yep.
One thing that could be a little bit more effort, but might still be worthwhile. The idea that, and this is something that I was specifically like correcting in my design as I saw it relative to Plants vs. Zombies, is that when you'd get a point in Plants vs. Zombies where you just have more sun than you know what to do with, and you won the level and it's just a matter of time. So what I would do, it was incredibly simple. In orbit, I would spawn one extra enemy per 500 energy that the player had saved up. So that means that if you, and I also like put a cap on the amount of energy that the player could hold at any given time. So it kind of incentivized the player to, do their best. But if they get too comfortable, if they're like too well built up on resources, then the game would react to that. So you could do something similar in this game where you just look at the amount of DNA that the player has, and if they don't have much DNA, then you can lean off for a little bit and allow them a chance to recover. And if they just have like more DNA than they know what to do with, then you could like be more aggressive with your spawning.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyway, again, I want to acknowledge that these are different beasts, that they are fundamentally different play experiences. So if you do have time to continue the development of this game and you want to get into a longer design conversation, I'm always up for it.
Thank you very much. I'll definitely consider reaching out if I have some design questions.
Sure. But yeah, so whether it's this game or any other future Jam projects, I'm always happy to take a look. Do you have any other long-term projects or any social media channels you'd like to give a shout out to?
I have a YouTube channel, Axelrod 777, but I don't post to it much. Something that I did a lot more when I was younger. Yes, I made the itch just for this jam. This isn't my first jam, but you could check out my previous game jam game I worked on, which was Yonoid 2. That was a really fun time. That was a while ago, but some of the friends that I made that with, not this, but that I made that with, are indeed making The Big Catch, which is going to be releasing on Steam soon. Trademark. So
yeah,
check out The Big Catch on Steam. That's a 3D platformer. I didn't really help with that, but most of what I've done, let's see, I did make a mod for Slay the Spire called The Axe, and I made a mod for Dota 2, but no one plays it anymore because I don't maintain it anymore.
Okay. And anything you want to link to specifically?
Anyone who likes Slay the Spire should check out my mod. One of the artists that helped on this game jam also did the art for that. So I will pull that up really fast.
Yeah, feel free to drop a link in the chat. Because I definitely am a fan of Slay the Spire myself.
Oh, okay. There it is.
Oh, fully custom character. Cool.
Also something I haven't maintained recently, but at least this one works.
Nice. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the stream. And yeah, whether it's this game or another jam project you work on in the future, I'm always happy to take a look. So Yeah, until then, hope you have a good evening, and I guess bye for now.
Yeah, goodbye. Good to meet you, and good luck with the rest of the Game Jam games that you check out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a great evening.
All right, thank you. You too.